They say family is your safe place, but what if the people you trusted most turned you into a stranger in your own story? Picture this. Your sister in a glowing white dress, smiles lighting up every photo, yet your name never appeared on the guest list. All the nights you sacrificed, the debts you carried, the love you gave erased with a single silence. In that moment, the world feels colder, but also clearer. Sometimes betrayal isn't the end, it's the beginning of freedom. As you step into this journey, ask yourself, would you forgive or walk away forever? If stories like this move your heart, a gentle like or subscribe will keep us connected on the path ahead. You once believed that family was a shelter, a place where sacrifices were seen and love was repaid with gratitude. But that evening, as the last streaks of sunlight faded from your window, you discovered how fragile that belief had always been. You were exhausted from a day of restoration work, muscles aching from lifting beams, your hands rough from sanding oak when your phone buzzed. At first you ignored it, thinking it was another contractor's update. But when the screen lit up, your world shifted. It was a photo of Nyla, your sister, glowing in a satin dress, her veil floating like a promise of perfection. The caption cut like glass. Final fitting for the big day. Nyla and Travis. Forever after. You scrolled frantically, your pulse racing. Each swipe revealed more. Cousins laughing in pastel gowns, your aunt arranging flowers, your mother holding embossed invitations you had never seen. Comments poured in. Can't wait to celebrate. Close quote, words that carved you deeper with every glance. Everyone was there. Everyone but you. Have you ever had that moment? When the world reminds you, without hesitation, that you do not belong. That no matter what you've given, your seat has already been taken by silence. If it were you, what would hurt more, the exclusion itself, or the realization that nobody thought you'd notice? Your phone rang again. Your mother's name glowed on the screen. You answered with shaking hands, your voice tight with hope. Yet her words were the same melody of dismissal you had heard all your life. Deborah, don't make this about you. You're always so busy. Nyla thought you wouldn't make time. Busy. A word that erases everything. The nights you stayed awake with her children, the loans you paid, the endless sacrifices you made. Busy was their excuse to pretend you didn't exist. And in that moment, your past replayed itself not as warm memories, but as proof. At 10, Nyla broke the vase, and you took the blame. At 17, she snuck out, and you covered for her. At 16, you won your scholarship, and your mother only sighed. Of course you got it. You're the responsible one. Responsible. Always dependable. Always forgotten. Tell me, if you were standing at that window, looking out at the Denver skyline, would you rage at the injustice, or would you collapse under the weight of it? Or maybe, just maybe, would you start to wonder if letting go could be lighter than holding on? That night, you whispered words you had never dared speak. I won't fix what they've broken. And as you pressed unfollow on Nyla, on your mother, on every cousin who smiled in those pictures, something remarkable happened. Each tap felt like lifting a stone off your chest. This wasn't revenge. It was release. And yet, the pull of old loyalty drew you back to Boulder 3 days later. The Victorian home stood against the mountains, proud yet weathered, its stained glass scattering morning light across the porch. It should have felt like home. Instead, it looked like a theater where you had always been cast as the forgotten understudy. Your father stood in the garage, his hands black with grease from the old Mustang. He nodded without warmth. Inside, your mother wore her careful smile, offering coffee cake like a peace treaty. You didn't sit. You didn't smile back. Instead, you asked the only question that mattered. Why wasn't I invited to Nyla's wedding? Close quote, her face shifted. For a second, truth almost broke through. Then the mask returned. You've always been too independent. Too intimidating. Nyla thought you wouldn't approve. Imagine hearing that your strength, your independence, the very qualities that carried your family through every crisis, had been twisted into reasons to erase you. And your father muttered from the doorway, "Don't make things harder than they already are." Harder for whom? For Nyla, who had always been protected. For your parents, who had always chosen her. Or for you, who had carried every burden while being told it was your duty. Exhaustion washed over you like a storm. You left without fire, only the hollow weight of someone who finally sees the truth. Later, sitting across from your friend Jenna in a cafe booth, you admitted the words you had never said aloud. "They don't see me as family anymore." Jenna studied you with quiet understanding. Then she asked the question that echoed louder than any insult, louder than any exclusion. "So when do you stop trying to be theirs?" Close quote, and maybe that's the question I should ask you now. If your sacrifices were erased in a single silence, would you still chase the love of those who turned their backs, or would you finally stop? What path would you choose, forgiveness or freedom? Because perhaps you've lived something like this too. And if these words stir something in your chest, if they remind you of nights you felt unseen, then let your thoughts spill into the comments. Your voice might be the very comfort someone else is searching for. And if you want to stay with stories that remind us we are not alone in our battles, pressing like or subscribe is more than support. It's a promise that together, we'll keep walking through truth, resilience, and the quiet strength of setting ourselves free. The days passed slowly after that cafe conversation, yet every hour felt like a weight pressing deeper into your chest. You had spoken the words, "They don't see me as family anymore," and though painful, they had freed you in a way nothing else had. Still, old habits don't vanish overnight. Part of you wanted to look back, to see if maybe they would call, maybe they would apologize, maybe this had all been a cruel mistake. But the silence that came was louder than any denial. Until the night you saw him. Jenna slid her phone across the table, her eyes steady, but filled with a quiet warning. On the screen, photos glowed beneath the dim lights of a downtown lounge. There was Travis, your sister's soon-to-be husband, his arm wrapped around a woman who was not Nyla. Their heads leaned close, their laughter careless, his lips brushing her neck as if promises made elsewhere didn't exist. You stared at the images, and for the first time in years, you didn't feel the urge to leap into action. The old you would have run straight to Nyla, desperate to protect her, desperate to stop her from walking into disaster. The old you would have been ready to absorb her anger when she refused to hear the truth, ready to play the role of savior again. But now you only felt a hollow stillness. No, close quote, you whispered to Jenna. I'm not doing that anymore. Have you ever felt that moment when the weight of responsibility slips off your shoulders, and for once, you allow others to face their own choices? It feels strange at first, almost unnatural, like silence after years of constant noise. But beneath the discomfort, there is something powerful. Relief. And so, you let the days roll forward, refusing to interfere. You told yourself it was not your fight, not your battle, not your burden. If Nyla wanted to believe in fairy tales, she would have to face the reality hidden in shadows. Then came the wedding day. From your window seat in Denver, you poured yourself a glass of wine. You told yourself you would not look, would not scroll, would not torture your heart with images of a celebration that had no place for you. But the notifications came in waves, buzzing against the wood of your table. 27 messages in 4 minutes. Your hand hovered over the screen, torn between indifference and instinct. You gave in. The video filled your phone, shaky but unmistakable. The Richwood estate glowed with white roses and gold accents, chandeliers glittering above 150 guests dressed in perfection. And in the center, your sister, mascara streaking down her face, her dress crumpled in her fists. Her voice was drowned by the chaos, but Travis's words cut through. You knew I was seeing someone. You set me up? Close quote. Nyla lunged at him, shoving his chest, her fury raw and desperate. Everyone knew. You weren't even discreet. Close quote. Then it happened. His arm swung out, his palm connecting with her cheek in a crack that silenced the ballroom. Gasps erupted. The camera shook violently. Someone screamed. And then the footage cut off. You sat frozen, wine glass trembling in your hand. For a moment, you felt something you didn't want to admit. Vindication. The truth had revealed itself, and you hadn't needed to say a word. But quickly, that feeling was swallowed by something heavier. Sorrow. No matter your differences, no sister deserved that moment. A dream turned into ashes before everyone's eyes. Your phone rang. It was your mother. You let it ring 4 times before you answered. Her sobs spilled through the line, raw and broken. Deborah, your sister's hurt. Please come. The words you had always said hovered on your tongue. I'll be right there. I'll fix it. But something inside you held firm. You thought of the wedding photos you were never meant to see, the invitations you never received, the years you had spent carrying burdens not your own. I wasn't invited, close quote, you said quietly. Showing up now would only make it worse. There was silence on the other end, broken only by your mother's shaking breath. She always needed you. No, close quote, you replied gently, your voice steady as a truth you had long avoided. She needed Travis. She needed status, security, a perfect day. What she wanted from me was absence. And that's exactly what she got. The line went dead. That night, you slept better than you had in years. But the story did not end there. The following week, the headlines still echoed. Society wedding ends in disaster. Your neighbors glanced at you with pity, some even offering words you hadn't asked for. You didn't deserve this, dear. Mrs. Henderson left banana bread at your door, the universal language of crisis comfort. Marcus from work texted late at night, reminding you that sometimes families only call you important when they need something fixed. And then, one evening, came the knock. Through the peephole, you saw your father, soaked from the rain, shoulders slumped as though the years had finally caught him. His voice cracked through the wood. Deborah, please. I need to talk. It's about the house. You hesitated, torn between letting him stand in the storm and answering the knock. And this is where the past and future collided, where the truth of everything they had done was about to break open. But pause with me here. If it were your father at that door, the same man who had looked away when you were raised, the same man who had chosen silence over protection, would you open it? Or would you finally let him taste the cold rain you had felt all your life? Share your thoughts, because your voice matters here. Someone else listening may need the strength you already carry. And if this story has touched a place you rarely speak of, tapping like or subscribe is not about numbers, it's about choosing to walk together, so no one has to carry the silence of family betrayal alone. You stood by the door, forehead pressed against the cool wood, listening to the sound of your father's knuckles rapping against it. His voice carried something you had not heard in years, not authority, not even disappointment, but desperation. It's about the house, close quote, he repeated, softer this time, as though the weight of those words could unlock your resolve. At first, you wanted to walk away. Let him stand in the rain the way you had stood alone in silence all your life. But something inside you shifted, not compassion, not loyalty, but a weary curiosity. You opened the door. Water streamed from his silver hair, his jacket clinging to his shoulders. He looked smaller, diminished, as though the storm outside had finally seeped into his bones. Without a word, you stepped. He pulled a thick manila envelope from his jacket, its edges warped by moisture. With trembling hands, he set it on the table. We've been using your money for something else, close quote, he said, his voice flat, as though admitting the truth was the only strength he had left. You blinked, trying to understand. What money? Close quote, the monthly checks for the house. For years, you had sent them $1,100 each month. You thought it was to help with their mortgage, to keep the old Victorian standing. But as you opened the envelope, the truth unfolded in cruel clarity. Loan documents, bank statements, foreclosure notices. The numbers glared back. $195,000. A home equity line of credit. Your chest tightened. You told me it was for the mortgage. Not exactly, close quote, he admitted, his eyes downcast. It was for Nyla. After Eric left, she needed stability. The kids, they needed the kids, close quote, you cut him off, your voice shaking. Always the shield. Always the excuse. You ran your fingers over the documents, your stomach twisting. 4 years. 12 months each. $1,100 every time. You did the math quickly in your head. $82,000. Money you had worked for, sacrificed for, stolen under false pretenses. Have you ever had that moment where the ground shifts beneath your feet and you realize the betrayal wasn't a single act, but years of deception stitched together like a tapestry? That what you thought was help was actually theft, wrapped in the language of family. You looked at him, your voice steady though your hands shook. You lied. You let me believe I was saving the house. But all along, I was paying for Nyla's debts, her life, her choices. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence was confirmation enough. You began photographing the documents, one by one, each shutter click cutting through the heavy air. He flinched at the sound, but you didn't stop. Evidence was all that kept you upright now. Why now? Close quote, you finally asked. Why tell me this after 4 years? Close quote. His face crumpled. Because I couldn't carry it anymore. After the wedding, after everything I had to tell you. You wanted to laugh, to scream, to cry, but instead you whispered, you didn't tell me for me. You told me for you. To ease your guilt, not my pain. The next days blurred into preparation. You lay the papers across your oak dining table, a table you had restored with your own hands, now transformed into a stage for truth. Each document, each statement, each signature was a brick in the wall of betrayal you had lived inside. When the moment came, they arrived together. Your mother, your father, and Nyla. They stepped into your home like mourners at their own funeral. Your mother's lips pressed tight, your father's shoulders hunched, Nyla clutching her arms as though holding herself together. You stood at the head of the table. Sit. They did, reluctantly. Nyla's eyes widened as she scanned the papers spread before her. What is all this? Close quote, this, close quote, you said calmly, sliding one document forward, is the loan you took out. $195,000. With Nyla listed as co-signer, claiming she lived at the house. And this, close quote, you tapped another stack, is proof of every payment I made. $82,000 in total. Nyla's voice cracked. I didn't know. Mom told me it was a refinance. You didn't look at her. Your eyes stayed locked on your mother. She lied. And you believed her because it was easier than facing the truth. Your mother's chin lifted, defiant even now. I did what I had to do. For the children. To keep a roof over their heads. You felt your breath tremble, but your words were steady. No. You kept that roof with my money. With my trust. You stole from me, and you let me believe I was helping. That's not sacrifice. That's fraud. The room fell into silence, heavy and suffocating. Your father's voice finally broke through, rough and weary. If you want the house, we'll sign it over. The side lot can be sold to repay you. For a moment, you stared at him, the man who had taught you to restore wood, to mend broken beams, to see beauty in what was damaged. And now, here he was, diminished by his own choices, offering you scraps of what should have been trust. You shook your head. I don't want your house. I just want this to end. Nyla's hands trembled, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'll pay you back. Every cent. You looked at her, really looked, and saw for the first time not the golden child, not the sister who had been shielded at your expense, but a woman standing at the edge of consequences she could no longer escape. Take care of your kids, close quote, you said quietly. Stand on your own feet. That's payment enough. The room remained silent, but it was a different kind of silence now, not denial, not excuses, but the weight of truth finally exposed. Let me ask you, if it were your family at that table, the lies spread out in black and white before you, what would you do? Would you demand repayment? Would you walk away? Or would you, too, realize that peace sometimes comes not from winning, but from no longer carrying what was never yours to hold? The silence at your dining table stretched long after the last word was spoken. Documents lay scattered like shards of glass, each page a reflection of years you could never get back. No one moved, no one dared to breathe too loudly. Your mother sat rigid, lips pressed into a thin line, as though holding on to pride was the only armor she had left. Your father's hands rested flat on the table, trembling slightly, as though the truth had drained him of all the strength he once carried. For the first time, you did not rush to fill the silence. You let it sit, heavy and undeniable, because silence had always been used against you. Tonight, it belonged to you. 2 weeks later, you found yourself in a quiet office downtown, seated across from a title attorney. The sterile smell of paper and ink filled the air as signatures etched across deeds, transferring the side lot of your parents' home into your name. Your father signed first, his pen dragging as though the weight of every stroke cut into his bones. Your mother hesitated longer, her face pale, but finally scrawled her name. You signed last, your hand steady, your heart unexpectedly calm. You did not gloat. You did not cry. You simply accepted the papers as they were handed to you, folded them into a neat envelope, and walked out into the cool autumn air. For once, you felt the ground beneath your feet was your own. Outside, Nyla waited. Her hair hung limp round her face, her eyes swollen from nights of crying. She clutched a small wooden box in her hands. This is for you, close quote, she whispered, pressing it forward. You opened the lid slowly. Inside lay your grandfather's pocket watch, tarnished but still ticking faintly. It was the one heirloom you had longed for, the one you thought had been lost to family politics years ago. How did you? Close quote, Dad found it when they cleared the attic. I remembered you once said it was the only thing you ever wanted. I thought maybe it should be yours now. You studied her face, waiting for the familiar arrogance, the shield of entitlement. But what you saw was different, a woman stripped of illusions, raw and vulnerable, carrying the wreckage of her own choices. Maybe time doesn't erase mistakes, close quote, you said softly, closing the lid. But it can teach us when to stop repeating them. She nodded, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. For the first time in years, you felt no urge to rescue her. You only felt a quiet acceptance. Days turned into weeks. The headlines faded, neighbors stopped whispering, and life began to fold itself back into something resembling normal. Yet it wasn't the same. Because for once, you weren't carrying anyone else's weight. One afternoon, Nyla showed up again, this time without gifts, without excuses, just herself. She sat at your kitchen table, fingers knotted tightly together. I got a job, close quote, she said, her voice small. 3 jobs, actually. Cleaning offices at night. Waiting tables on weekends. I can't live the way I used to. You listened, nodding, not offering solutions. She continued, the kids, they're different now too. Emma walks herself to school. Lucas joined Little League. They're seeing me stand on my own. Maybe that's what they needed all along. For a moment, the air between you softened. You realized that perhaps, in choosing not to save her, you had finally given her the chance to save herself. Let me ask you this. If someone you love has always leaned on you until you collapse, would you step back and let them fall, hoping then rise stronger? Or would you keep carrying them, even if it breaks you in the end? The check from the sale of the lot arrived soon after. You studied the numbers, calculating what it could and could not replace. It would never restore the $82,000 you lost. It would never give you back the years of being unseen. But as you slipped the check into your wallet, you realized it represented something far greater. The first repayment of truth. And truth, you knew now, was priceless. One quiet Saturday, Nyla returned again, this time alone. Rain tapped gently against your windows as she placed her palms flat on your table. I need to say something, close quote, she began, her voice breaking. I'm sorry. Not just for the money, not just for the wedding. For everything. For every time I let you carry my burdens. For every time I stood by while mom and dad chose me over you. You studied her carefully, searching for performance, for manipulation. But there was none. Just honesty, raw and unpolished. I'll pay you back, close quote, she added, her voice barely above a whisper. It might take years, but I will. You shook your head slowly. Take care of your children. Teach them what you never learned, to stand on your own. That's worth more than repayment. Her tears fell freely then, but you didn't move to comfort her. Not because you were cruel, but because you finally understood comfort must come from within, not from someone else's sacrifice. When she left that day, you stood by the window watching her car pull away. It was old now, dented and worn, no longer the luxury vehicles she once flaunted. Yet it was hers, paid for by her own hands. And in that dented car, you saw something you had never seen in her before. Resilience. Weeks later, you sat on your porch swing, journal open in your lap, as the sun dipped behind the mountains. You wrote only one line that evening. The softest revenge is peace and quiet. No bitterness curled inside you as you penned those words. No burning desire to even the score. Just the calm certainty that you had reclaimed yourself, that you had drawn a boundary no one could cross again. And in that stillness, you realized something profound. You didn't need their apologies to heal. You didn't need repayment to find closure. You only needed the strength to stop carrying what was never yours. So I ask you, listener, if you were in that moment holding the pocket watch of your grandfather, hearing your sister whisper apologies that came too late, what would you feel? Would you cling to anger, demanding every cent back, every scar acknowledged? Or would you, too, find peace and finally letting go, trusting that the freedom of your own heart was worth more than any repayment? As the seasons turned, you discovered that healing did not arrive in grand gestures, but in quiet moments, morning light spilling across your kitchen counter, the soft tick of your grandfather's pocket watch, the laughter of children playing in a field nearby. These small fragments, once overlooked, became proof that peace was not something given by others, but something you created within yourself. Your family's choices had carved wounds, but they had also given you clarity. By letting go of the role of savior, you learned to save yourself. And perhaps that is the truest form of strength, not holding everything together, but knowing when to set it down. So I ask you, if you carried years of unspoken burdens, would you keep holding them, or would you finally lay them down and breathe freely? If this journey